There's a line near the end of this trailer where Dr. Doom looks every hero standing in front of him dead in the eye and says 7 words that reframe everything you're about to watch. All of you have lived stolen lives. 7 words. And by the time we get there, you'll understand exactly why they hit so hard. Marvel just dropped the second trailer for Avengers Doomsday at D23 and it is completely loaded. Easter eggs, callbacks, reveals that recontextualize this entire saga. So let's go through it, starting with the very first shot, because it tells you exactly how dangerous this version of Dr. Doom is. We open on Dr. Doom seated on his throne in Latveria. Look at the ground in front of it. Those green ruins burning into the floor aren't just set dressing. That same ruin pattern shows back up later on his gauntlet, the one he uses to physically catch Thor's hammer out of the air. Marvel is telling you in the first few seconds that this Doom fights with both technology and magic. Quick refresher if you need it. Dr. Doom debuted in Fantastic Four issue number 5, courtesy of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and became the team's arch nemesis almost overnight. He and Reed Richards were rivals back in college, and Doom blames Reed directly for the accident that scarred his face. Since then, he's devoted his life to becoming the world's foremost scientist. He's second in line for Sorcerer Supreme, and he rules Latveria with an iron fist. Over decades of comics, he's grown into basically the central villain of the entire Marvel universe. In both versions of Secret Wars, he steals unlimited cosmic power for himself. And it looks like this movie and Secret Wars Off Date are pulling from Time Runs Out and the 2015 Secret Wars comic run, where Doom actually recreates the whole multiverse as a single world called Battle World. Here's what makes him different from every other villain. Though he genuinely believes he can fix the world's problems, conquering it, or in this case conquering the multiverse, is just his method. And this throne isn't only in the movie, there's a full exhibit replicating it at the Disney Expo in Shanghai. Remember that fan theory that all those countdown clock teaser images were actually Doom watching us from this exact throne room the whole time? That theory turned out to be true, except this throne room isn't just a castle set, it's the reconstructed palace of He Who Remains, straight out of the Loki show. Hang on to that because it's about to matter a lot more than you'd expect. Because the very next shot might be the biggest gut punch in the whole trailer, a portrait of Doom's wife and son. There's a theory that this version of Doom actually comes from the universe 828, the Fantastic Four's home universe, which would explain the Latverian delegation we saw at the Future Foundation Summit and why he showed up at the end of the Fantastic Four first steps. Other rumors say that Doom and Reed are still friends here, that he hasn't made his heel turn yet, and that portrait might be exactly why this version of Doom doesn't need the world's love, because he already has a family. But Doom's comic backstory is tragic and I don't think that's an accident. In the comics, he lost his mother when he was young. She was killed by the Baron's men, and he made a vow to retrieve a soul from the afterlife, take revenge on the Baron, and build a world where that could never happen to another child again. So if this version of Doom has a wife and son, my guess is that we're watching the setup for losing them. That's what breaks him bad. It lines up with the kidnapping angle too. After the Thor teaser, the working theory is that Doom kidnaps Thor's daughter, Love, to harness her power. That actually fits a pattern running through this whole saga. The Infinity Saga was defined by sons with complicated relationships with their father. Now the Multiverse Saga is ending with those same heroes becoming parents themselves. Logan, Tony, Steve, Scott, Thor, Wanda, Vision, Reed, Sue. Every one of them is fighting for the next generation now. Between that, the X-Men casting news, and Brand New Day already in theaters, this might genuinely be the best time to be a Marvel fan. So who's Doom up against? We cut to Sue Storm explaining exactly who he is to a room full of people in what looks like Steve and Peggy's house, and everyone is there. Namor, the Wakandans, and based on the way the camera cuts around the room, it looks like the X-Men are in the house too. My read is that the moment everyone sets their differences aside, because they finally realize Doom is a threat that none of them can handle alone. We already know how the Fantastic Four get to Earth 616. That was set up in the Thunderbolts post-credit scene. That movie ended with the Elena's team accidentally taking the name The Avengers, and we've since heard Sam Wilson is suing them over it so he can start his own team. But this new lineup has something Sam's group doesn't: the legitimacy of the Avengers Tower. That's exactly why Thor and the Fantastic Four show up here and not wherever Sam's team happens to be meeting. Here's a question worth sitting with though. Why did the Fantastic Four come to this universe in the first place? One option is incursions. In Fantastic Four First Steps, Reed already faced a version of this exact dilemma, a trolley problem where he could sacrifice his own son to save the world, and with incursions, the equivalent would be sacrificing an entire universe to save his own. He refused that trade once already, insisting there had to be another way. Maybe this is that choice catching up with him. The other option is more personal. Maybe Doom kidnapped Reed's son, Franklin, and retraced his energy signature straight to this universe. And then there's Steve. He's reintroduced here with long hair, which is a bigger clue than it looks. We know that during his years on the run in Avengers Infinity War, his hair and beard grew out. We've always assumed that he settled down with Peggy in the 1940s, but that long hair reads more like the 1960s or 70s. So maybe Steve and Peggy didn't stay in his own timeline's past at all. Maybe they moved to a different universe entirely. One where long hair was actually in style. That would also explain something that's bugged fans for a while. Why didn't Steve interfere during all those decades living through history? Because it wasn't his history to interfere with. And it looks like he arrives alongside the Fantastic Four, which would put him living in their universe around 1969. And then the trailer shows us New York completely wrecked. What's left looks like Central Park surrounded by the ruins of the rest of Manhattan. Thor praying in the woods from earlier might actually be happening in the middle of Central Park. One theory is that this is the X-Men's doing in some other universe, after they stopped an incursion of their own. Ian McKellen already let it slip that his character destroys New Jersey at some point, and the look on his face in this footage is pure guilt. But honestly, the more likely answer is Doom. My read is that he starts this movie as an ally to the team. That new mask that was showed off at D23 looks exactly like the one he shows Franklin at the end of First Steps, and it's only after he causes this level of devastation that his former friends turn on him and demand answers. And I'm genuinely relieved that they're keeping the Reed and Doom relationship intact, because in the comics, that rivalry is the heart of every great Doctor Doom story. You cannot bring this character into the MCU without it front and center. Remember that chair reveal video Marvel put out? The final two names revealed were Pedro Pascal and Robert Downey Jr. Reed and Doom saved for last on purpose. So here's my theory. The two of them were friends until recently, and Doom tricked Reed into helping him build a device meant to stop incursions. In the comics, Reed actually does invent a machine that wipes out entire other universes to save his own, and is consumed by guilt afterwards. If the movie is pulling from that story, then Doom didn't just betray Reed, he manipulated him into killing trillions of people in another universe without Reed even realizing what he'd done. But the single most intriguing shot in this entire trailer is this one. Loki standing inside Steve's house wearing a full TVA uniform. If you haven't watched the Loki show, here's what you need to know. After he steals the Tesseract back in Avengers Endgame, Loki gets arrested by the Time Cops and dragged outside the normal timeline entirely to TVA headquarters. He eventually learns that the TVA was created by a Kang variant to stop other versions of Kang from ever appearing, and by the end of the series, Loki chooses to take that role for himself. He now sits at the center of an enormous, constantly growing multiversal tree holding infinite branching timelines together. The problem is, infinite universes cause infinite problems, and those problems are the incursions this whole trailer keeps hinting at. Loki did all of this to protect free will. Now he's dealing with the consequences of that same free will, because the multiverse is actively dying underneath him. So why is he standing in Steve's living room? He might be there to recruit Steve or to warn him an incursion is coming. And here's why that theory hit so hard. At the end of Endgame, Steve went into the past specifically to live with Peggy and raise their son. That choice would have created its own branching timeline, which by everything we just explained, could easily be the exact kind of incursion threatening to collapse everything. In other words, Steve choosing his own happiness may have quietly put billions upon billions of lives at risk. Loki could be here to eliminate that threat, to warn Steve directly, or to send him home, which might explain how Steve ends up appearing earlier in the same trailer. Which brings us to the fight that everyone's going to be talking about, Doom vs Thor one-on-one. The way it's shot immediately reminded me of Thanos casually beating Thor at the start of Infinity War, and I think that's intentional. It's Marvel's way of showing you instantly just how far out of anyone's league Doom actually is. If you remember the Loki show, Thor's brother is the one sitting at the center of that multiversal tree, using his own powers to physically hold the multiverse together. And in the comics, Doom has a long history of stealing power directly from cosmic beings. So my guess is simple. Doom steals Loki's power and Loki escapes to Earth specifically to warn his brother that Doom is coming for him next. Thor responds by coming to Doom with Stormbreaker, the exact weapon that killed Thanos, and Doom slows the axe mid-swing, maybe by slowing time itself, then catches it, completely calm, using just the tips of his finger. And then the trailer ends on its biggest set piece yet, Doom commanding an army of Sentinels against basically every hero we've seen. For context, Sentinels first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 14, giant robots built by humans specifically to hunt down mutants. Over decades of comics, they've come to represent the soulless bigotry humanity has aimed at mutant kind. They were the very first villains the X-Men fought in the classic animated series, and Days of Future Past is entirely built around stopping a future where Sentinels have nearly wiped mutants out completely. There's a theory that's floated around before that the MCU's Department of Damage Control uses seized Stark tech to build these things in the 616 universe, the same way they repurposed Stark drones back in Ms. Marvel. And this fight might be our first real hint of Dr. Doom commanding a full Sentinel army. We already caught a glimpse of Cyclops fighting one solo in the ruins of the X-Mansion back in teaser 3, but watch how Doom actually controls them here. He's not hacking their programming. He touches the ground, a green mist spreads out, and the Sentinels start moving as an extension of him, mirroring his own body as they rise. That green mist is the exact color of Loki's magic, which lines up with the theory we just laid out. Doom steals Loki's power early in the movie. Loki escapes to warn Steve and the others, and that theft is what sets up the Thor vs. Doom fight in the first place. I love that these are the comic accurate Sentinels, none of that X-Men Days of Future Past redesign. You get the sense that every hero on screen thought they'd already beaten these things, right up until Doom raised them all from the dead. Which brings us back to that line, all of you have lived stolen lives. As Doom says it, the trailer cuts through exactly the people it applies to, every hero whose choices split off a new timeline and may have triggered an incursion somewhere in the multiverse as a result. Scott and Cassie together because Scott defied the snap and survived it by hiding out in the quantum realm. Franklin and Johnny standing in some kind of white void, possibly a glimpse of what's left once Doom starts remaking everything into Battleworld. Every X-Men who's rewritten the timeline more times than anyone can count. Loki, who evaded death entirely by slipping into another branch of time. Thor standing next to his daughter, a life he effectively took from God the God Butcher. Then Steve Rogers with his son, James, who only exists because Steve bent the timeline to get the life he wanted. And in the San Diego Comic-Con footage, Doom follows that up with something even heavier. In time you will learn to forgive me. It's the same idea running through this whole character. Doom doesn't see himself as the villain. He genuinely believes he's found the only way to save the multiverse. The real question is, who's he saying that to? Is it Reed, his oldest friend? Is he asking forgiveness for kidnapping Reed's son? For using these kids as fuel for some multiversal weapon? For triggering the incursion that wipes out an entire universe? We don't know yet, and I am so excited to finally see the real trailer for this movie. Post all your reactions and theories in the comments below. I want to hear them. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you get alerts to all my latest videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.